Welcome aboard, everybody. It is another Monday here on the Let There Be Talk channel. Your favorite channel, Let There Be Talk, on a 4/22. 2 days after 4/20, we are lighting the candles right here in Los Angeles, California. Great guest today. Great guest. Comedian Dane Cook stops by here, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. A little look behind the curtain, some work talk. Yeah, I've been trying to have more comedians on because I was talking to Dane about it on the show. It's something I do 99% of my time and don't talk much about it. So this year in 2019, we're going to change that a little bit and get into some of the process of doing stand-up comedy. There's nothing harder I've ever done in my life, and Dane's been doing it for 29 years, so it's always good to be able to talk to somebody that's been doing something that long, whatever it is, welding, comedy, music, building cars, anything. It's great to sit down with people that have done it. You don't know everything. I know when you're young, you're like, I know everything. I don't ask nothing. I'm going to do it my way. And then later on, you're like, shit, I should have asked. There's people out there that have done this. Anyway, it was great to have Dane Cook on, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. I want to thank everybody that came out to the 3 shows this weekend. I especially want to thank Joey Diaz for taking me along for an incredible ride, a theater ride. Fitzgerald in St. Paul and Pabst Theater in Milwaukee. Absolutely electric rooms and amazing crowds. And thank you to all the new friends if you're here listening to the podcast for your first time, and we met over the last 3 days. It was a great ride. Before I do get to the guest, next week I will be at the Las Vegas Comedy Cellar April 29th through May 5th, and then La Jolla Comedy Store headlining June 7th through the 9th. Those are some upcoming road gigs. Get down on that. Also, I want to thank the Patreon page, patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. All the bonus episodes, bonus episode number 31 will be up later on, I think tomorrow. And I want to thank Art how do you say your last name, dude? Griego? Art Griego. There he is. Like I always say, be a Patreoner and I'll fuck your name up on the show. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into it. Have a great week. Hope to see you guys. I'll be at the Comedy Store all week this week, in and out of there, and trying to get funny. That's all I do each day is wake up and try to figure it out. Let's get into the guest right now. Here he is, Mr. Dane Cook. All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. Fantastic guest today, Mr. Dane Cook. How are you, my
What's
man?
up, Dean? What's going on, man?
I'm good. I haven't had comedians on pretty much for like 7 years.
I feel like to just our quick backstory, because we met at the Laugh Factory initially. A handful of years ago. And what I always loved about our relationship is it was very little talk of comedy.
Yeah.
You know, we always kind of, started chatting about fucking music and albums and
motorcycles,
cars. Which you helped me to get my first LA bike, which I still have and love. So for me, it's like I feel like this fits into our kind of chats because although we're comedy geeks, at the same time, we love music.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to really do like Marin's show because Marin's show was so next level and great. And then I thought, what if I interview people that I worked with or inspired me?
Yeah.
All these musicians.
Well, the show's great, man. I've listened to it, and you're doing a bang-up job.
What happened to me, though, what I found out was 90% or say 75% of my life now is comedy. Right. And here I was not really talking about it. And a lot of people that were listening weren't necessarily comedy fans.
Right.
So I'm like, wait a minute. I need to incorporate that world in.
Yeah, because you're plugging dates, I'm sure, and they're like, oh, maybe he's out there playing the fucking the banjo. Like, what's he doing?
Oh, no, they know I do comedy, but they just weren't going.
Right.
Which is weird. It's like, and I'm obsessed with comedy.
And comedians, we love music. We all play. I mean, all Burr and drums. Everybody that we know, seemingly in comedy, plays instruments, loves music, and a lot of musicians that I've met, they fucking love comedy, and they talk about, man, I wish I could be up there by myself doing. So there's a synergy between the two.
Absolutely. That was the point of the podcast when I started, was have a musician on, and then at the end go, hey, you ever thought about doing comedy?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys are funnier than a lot of comedians.
Because they're so real and they've experienced so much shit that they know how to like observe and report on like the real interesting stuff in life.
Yeah.
They're that's why I love listening, man, because it's like you always get even what was probably benign to them is really fascinating stuff. Yeah. But let me quickly embarrass you because what I always, first of all, when we were coming up in LA and I got to know Dean, it was like two things that struck me is, number one, first of all, you always treated me like just a regular dude.
Yeah.
Whether I was receiving backlash or if I was getting some kind of praise, it didn't fucking matter. You've always been a stand-up guy. I mean that on and off stage to where like I felt like we had a real good, just easy rapport. So that was number one. But the thing that I always loved about your story is just you started late. And this whole thing about how you're going to build it, seemingly coming into the game, too late in some people's eyes. And yet I fed into that, and I believed in that because I came in with people not believing that I would get to where I finally got to. So it was kind of all those things mixed together that made me excited to finally get here with you, buddy.
It's interesting that you talk about that because I think it's pretty bizarre when we look at your career. If you look at it, I don't know your early career, of course, so I didn't know there was any kind of, this guy's not going to make it or something. Have no idea of the early days. But I do know that you remind me a lot of bands where they get really big. Everybody loves them, and then everybody wants to hate them for some reason. And I'm not saying everybody wants to hate you, but I'm saying some reason in this world we champion someone.
Yes.
And then when they make it, then we go, fuck that.
Right.
And is that like a fair assumption of what was happening with you? I mean, you had so much shit go on in your life since I've met you.
Well, what's so wild about that notion is that I felt like my entire life, even before stand-up, was I was always kind of challenged by the people around me. I wasn't entirely comfortable in my own skin. I was an awkward kid, and I was not popular, and all those kind of class clown things. They weren't me. That wasn't me at all. When I started doing stand-up in Boston, 1990 was the first year I started. I started receiving animosity the first week I was doing stand-up comedy. Within a few open mic nights, I'd already heard from people around me that certain comics that had been there for a minute, they didn't want to see me again. They didn't want to, receive me in these clubs. And that was hard, because I loved comics and comedy. I grew up watching, all these people that were heroes of mine. So as I went up the ranks, weirdly, I almost was accepting of the fact that the spanking machine happens right after you finally, get to where it is that you are hoping that you'll be. Yeah. So it sucked. It definitely sucks, the hazing, but my fans were there. My head was in a good, headspace to deal with whatever was coming at me. And I knew that it would inform my stand-up in my life even in a better way moving forward. So I wouldn't change it, even though sometimes it was pretty brutal.
Yeah. If you, of course, we're kind of jumping ahead, that if you look at your career, you wouldn't change anything at all? You just keep it how it is?
No, I mean, I really feel like the whole first 10 years was all just, road dogging and learning and, New York and, first sets in LA. The formative years, so to speak, this is 29 years this year.
29 years.
Yeah. So when I finally started to find my fans and finding some success, the only thing that I would ever say, like when I look back that I would, change is certain hairstyles and shit that I wore. It's never about the content, even though, to be honest, it's like we can all look back and go, some of my early stuff probably wasn't fully fleshed out, but I wasn't fully fleshed out.
Right.
So I needed room to grow and fail in order to maintain longevity.
I get that. I'm only 9 years in, and I'm trying to figure out comedy is... There's a lot of things with comedy, right? When you walk on the stage, people are going to immediately judge you by whatever you're wearing.
Right.
Or how you look or whatever it is. So that's already something different if you looked how you looked or if I look how I look. Right. And go up and they go, oh, this guy's he's a crazy man or something.
Right.
When you were...
And me, it was like, oh, this alpha frat boy.
Yeah.
It's like they want to stigmatize you. They want to put something on you so that they can, we all do. I think we all do that. Like, oh, he's like so-and-so. We compare and kind of put people in boxes.
Right. I mean, it would be fair to call you alpha, though, right? I mean, you're definitely a competitive guy. That's probably what drove you to get to where you are. Sometimes I think when you're like that, people look at it and be like, fuck this guy. It's tough to change your personality if you have some kind of competitive drive. Did you play sports in school?
I didn't, no. I was... my dad was an athlete. I'm his only son. My father, George, all-around athlete, boxer. He was scouted by the Boston Braves in 1952. He was a tremendous athlete. Went to BC, basketball, everything. And I didn't have it. I was just too trepidatious, man. I was scared of people and being competitive. So it was interesting because when I went on stage and maybe I put a bit of my dad's energy into my performance, like, be even if I'm faking it, be brave, be bold. And what I found was it took a lot of years to finally come to the conclusion, oh, I am that guy. I'm not being something on stage that I'm not. I'm just afraid to be that guy all the time, everywhere. Yeah. So yeah, I went from beta to alpha. It took like a bunch of years. But yeah, I definitely think that it's I understand why people say that because I lean into everything that I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird thing, because you want to get somewhere, but then when you get there, how did you get there?
Right.
It's like some people go like, frat guy or whatever.
Right.
But I also think that was kind of the era that you were growing up in.
Oh, totally. And I didn't mind, leaning into that because I was playing colleges. I'm standing literally on like billiards tables and frat houses and performing for, kids my own age, younger than me, older than, like, I was that, I'd hang out with them after. And even though I didn't drink or do drugs or anything, I still would like party. And, it was like the show's over, but I'm still here because you're my age, we want to hang together. And so I think that was what people identified with me, and it's certainly what I perpetuated for a lot of years. First Comedy Central special, I look at it now, I'm in a tank top and spiked hair and, tight jeans, and I look back and I go, oh, I was catering to the demographic that I came up with, But I knew even in that era that nothing lasts forever. Yeah. Nothing lasts forever, man. And you know what? Life is more... ebbs than flows, and once you lean back into that, then I think that, or I enjoy it a lot more. Even the down days or the days where things are stellar, it's like I'm more even keeled across the board. I don't freak out like I may have when I was younger.
Yeah. It's
but when you take the stage, you're talking about like, oh, people judge you and they see you. What's so interesting is like when I see somebody take the stage that I feel like is completely unusual, let's just say, right? I'm more interested in that. I feel like it's so strange. It's almost alien to me that like so many people want to put you in a place that's like, oh, that's confusing, or I can't support that because I'm not it. I want to see something that I'm not, that I want to, understand the life or the music of or whatever. So it's interesting because I feel like your fans, my fans of comedy in general, they don't give a fuck about what happened yesterday or tomorrow, because the only thing that's funny is what's happening right now. So a lot of that stuff is just, we got to put that out of our head. When you take the stage 9 years in, who cares how old you are? It doesn't matter, 19 or 47. It's what you're doing that moment on stage that's going to dictate truly how people feel about you after you leave. Maybe not before, but definitely after.
Yeah, I love the challenge of winning them over.
Yeah.
You got to look at me. No one knows who I am. And say I'm going on in between you and like Rogan or something.
Yeah.
And I have to deliver the funny right away.
Sure.
Grab them. So then they have trust in it, which is it's. When you started, who were the guys that you were into? Because I'm just trying to figure out what your flavor was, because it was pretty much storytelling. But who were your comics that you listened to and loved?
Well, I listened to a lot of old comedy albums that we had around. So Bob Newhart albums, storyteller, long form storytelling.
He's amazing.
But at the same time, the energy of people like Robin Williams or Sam Kinison, watching the young comedian specials on HBO when I was teenager, and loving the commitment to energy, but still storytelling. So that was going to be my avenue. I was like, I wonder if I can be a physical, energetic, and yet introspective storyteller. And I couldn't at first. It was going to be more of the manic and the crazy shit. But I had a feeling that as I got older, that it would start to perpetuate in a different way.
When you're up there, it's funny when you're an energetic comic. I was thinking about it a couple weeks ago when I saw somebody doing that. If you were having a bad night, you would still have to be energetic, which is an interesting animal of being a comic. Like if I'm having a weird night, I'm still just me.
Right.
But if you're an up-tempo moving around, that's kind of a weird thing. Have you had nights where you go up there and you're like, man, I'm not in the mood for this? I know you can turn it on.
Yeah.
But do you turn it on in a way of like, this is kind of funky, I just want to stand here tonight?
I've definitely had that, when you're in your own head, like when you're in your own head, you're having a conversation while you're trying to be performing. Yeah, many, many times. And yet what I've tried to cultivate over many years, or kind of train myself, is even when it goes fucking belly up, that can be entertaining. Yeah. There's something in there. And even if I'm in a cruddy mood and I don't want to, I don't take the same, if people see my show now, and I hope people come to the new tour, it's like, it's not the same thing that I was doing when they discovered me, 15, 20 years ago on Comedy Central. And that's a good thing, because I wouldn't want to be doing the same thing that I was doing then. I'm sure most people wouldn't want to be seeing the same thing that I was doing then. That would be weird. So when I'm on stage now and I'm feeling any kind of emotion besides just like, I don't know, the concentration of performing, I let it come in. I let it fucking bleed into my set. You'll watch me 5 nights in a row. You might be like, oh, you know what? That story about the stalker that you have, like, you got really like dark at that one point. It's like, yeah, it's because maybe today I was feeling it in a different way. Yeah. So I think as performers, what we're trying to do is constantly get closer to what we think is funny truth and closer to what we think is stark reality about ourselves as human beings and the human condition in general. That's what I try to do when I get up there.
I specifically remember, because I didn't really know who you were, I started comedy in 2009, but I was kind of watching comedy in 2006. I was going to Jay Davis's Life at the Party.
Sure.
And you would be there doing some drop-ins and, of course, Tourgasm and stuff. And that's how I kind of find out about you. But I missed your whole super stuff before that.
Yeah.
But I started seeing you right after a lot of the drama that was going down with you.
Right.
Your brother, of course, stole your money.
Right.
Your parents passed away.
True.
There was the Louis confrontation.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of drama. And I saw you do a few sets that were like, oh, wow, this is like a new Dane Cook. And I really thought you were going to go down that road. It was dark, but it was pretty real and funny. There was one bit about committing suicide and leaving gifts for people.
Right.
Do you remember that? Like,
Yeah.
surprise. Oh, look what he got me. Like you're
Yeah.
in a bathtub dead. But they're like,
Hanging yourself with
Yeah.
Christmas lights so
Yeah,
at least
that-
it looks
yeah.
somewhat joyous.
But do you remember that there was a run of those jokes that were, it was a serious dark about 25 minutes you were working on.
Yeah.
And then you kind of abandoned that. What was that like a therapy?
I did it on SNL. They actually let me do the whole suicide bit on Saturday Night Live. And it was definitely therapeutic. I was definitely in a negative, dark spot. You know, I felt like my life was kind of spiraling out of control. I was still really hurt and grieving. And then on top of everything, having somebody that is a respected peer like lie and say these things about me was so unorthodox. I was like, how do I fight back against? I don't know how to fight a lie. I don't really know how to stand up to that. And so my way of dealing with it was to put it into my stand-up. It may not have come back as answers to questions, but it was in the new material that I was doing at that time. Yeah, it was definitely like it was a. I was in a darkness at that point, and so I did Isolated Incident, and a lot of that special was about like. My parents, my mom dying, the letter that I got from a hater that said, your parents died to get away from your shitty comedy.
I remember that. Yeah.
You know, which
Yeah.
I made that, which made me laugh, but it's still fucked up to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
And as I purged myself of all of that and kind of came to terms with what everything was and did the work on myself, then my stand-up started, I didn't so much abandon that as realizing I still see like the kind of unusual twists in life from a vantage point where it's not always from the darkest place. But I'm glad I experienced what I experienced, even though it sometimes brings back hard memories, because it also informed me as a person, how I treat people, how I want to be treated, how I mentor people that, come to me for advice because they know I've been through hell and back, and I have nothing to gain from. I can't take anything away from you. I can just impart something to you that might actually help you to not have so much fucked up shit in your path. So it's one of those weird things. Dichotomy is like, I wouldn't change any of those things. I think I just needed to go through those. And the reason that my comedy, even now in on the Tell It Like It Is tour, continues to grow and evolve is a lot of it was because I saw George Carlin when I was a kid. And if you watched Carlin's special to special, he was different. He was exploring, sometimes very, very dark. The one set with the grave, the site behind him, cemetery.
Awesome.
So I watched a lot of Carlin, and I found a clip of Carlin many, many years ago where he was, he was the hippy dippy weatherman for many years. Yeah, with the crazy hat. And he went on a late night appearance after people knew him as the hippy dippy weatherman for many, many years. And he brought a cardboard cutout of himself as the hippy dippy weatherman. It was like the same size as him, and he walked out with it. This is the opening of his set on like the Jack Parr show, or whatever the fuck, was the late night show at that point. And he looks at it and he goes, a lot of you guys may know this guy. He was a funny cat. He did some crazy shit. He goes, but this guy, and then he pushed it and his picture fell out of the frame. He goes, he's fucking gone. He goes, I'm George Carlin. All right, let's start. Dude,
I gotta watch that.
He killed it. He killed it. He killed his persona. He killed the moneymaker. He killed the thing that people like loved and discovered about him. And he risked alienating so many fans who were like, well, I'm not going to enjoy him anymore because he's not the character.
Right.
When I saw that, I was like, oh, I can be whatever I want, and I can grow up when I need to grow up, and I can be dark again if I need to, and caustic. Or I can be observational and a little bit, twisted sometimes, but now it's more observational and introspective at this point, but without losing. The hardest part of this whole journey, the last 3 years preparing, was I just don't want to lose the funny. I didn't want it to become
you.
like a one-man show kind of situation. I know the value in that, but I didn't want to do that. I was like, I want the LPMs, the laughs per minute. But still with a story about my brother doing what he did, or I do a whole thing about this unbelievable story about this girl who went missing, a kidnapped girl, and how I was involved in this.
I heard that one.
Yeah, and so for me, being able to take stuff that's fucked up and off kilter, and yet still be a person that you feel is approachable, I think that's kind of a unique spot to be in as a performer. So I'm enjoying that. That's where I'm at now.
Yeah. Can we talk about a little bit about the Laugh Factory era, how that drama went down?
Oh,
your band.
Yes.
And then you kind of disappear a little bit from comedy. What was happening during that time? Were you having a personal meltdown or
no? I was past any of the meltdown moments of my life. Parents, brother, just that was within like 2 years of each other. Just that period probably sent me into the worst tailspin. What really had happened at that point was I've been playing the factory, and I knew the owner of the Laugh Factory I'm very good friends with, but it's like most men at some point, and we'd been working together for 17 or 18 years, you're going to have disagreements. We all go toe to toe with each other, and I think it actually eventually ends up benefiting relationships. So although the press reported I had some kind of lifetime ban, and they also reported I was a co-owner of the club, like, not true. I never owned the club. I never had a piece of it. I never booked any talent. I was just a guy that went in and performed and enjoyed that I was on Sunset Boulevard. So we had a falling out, Jamie and I, and he came to me. He just basically said, "Listen, I think we gotta part ways for a bit." And I didn't fight it. I literally, Dean, my whole philosophy in life and in that moment was like, these things happen. I can't fight this. This is just what people want to say, and they're going to lock into it if they want to believe this. And even though the press was saying I was banned from the factory and all this stuff, I knew there would come a day where we would have some kind of, conversation. I'll get to that in a second, because what did I do during those 2 years? I went back to my writing. For me, it was like I didn't dip out. I was still doing the store and the improv, but I started writing more films, and I started putting more work together that was away from comedy, because that's as interesting to me, being a producer, or now I'm directing films. So finding my footing there, I looked at it as an opportunity. Like, I'm out of here now. I have less stage time right now. I got to work on something else. So 2 years goes by. I write a few scripts. I meet a bunch of new friends, because I actually had more downtime. And then Jamie calls me. He's like, "I love you." I go, "I love you." And literally, I was back 2 nights later. So my lifetime ban was 2 years.
I was there the first night that you came back.
Yeah.
Because I was on the show, and TJ Miller was on the show.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then there's that drama of him saying you bumped him. I always want to ask people.
Isn't that weird, the bumping thing? Because
I wanted to ask
everybody
you about that.
we know. It's like everybody does drop-ins and pop-ins, and it's kind of goes with the territory. Like Chris Rock used to bump me at the Comedy Cellar for 2 years while I was there. I never complained about it. I never got upset about it. I think that a lot of people, especially younger comics, sometimes feel entitled. Like, my 9:10 spot is supposed to be at exactly 9:10, but the way I look at it, if I was a club owner, and I know the way my club owner friends looked at it, like, you get Chris Rock to come in for free on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, like, that's keeping the lights on in this place, that kind of word of mouth.
Absolutely.
And I knew I was helping to keep the lights on at the Laugh Factory for a lot of years. I knew that when I got there that it had its rough spots. So I make no bones about it. I felt like that was like my home base. And I never bumped anybody anywhere else ever.
Just the factory.
Just the factory when I would pop in. And by the way, not on a weekend. I'd never do it on a Friday, Saturday. I'd come in on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. And so, yeah, it ruffled some feathers, but it was like, yo, man, this is part of the hazing of comedy. And it's what happened to me. And by the way, I won't name names, but we know guys now who were very vocal about bumping, and they'll bump because they know if they have a last minute idea, they want to get on stage somewhere. And it just kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, I understand it. It's I have said many times, if somebody bumps me and they're huge, it's just better for the comedy community because the club takes a picture of it, and
right.
And then they go, holy shit, such and such was at the club last night. We got to go, and it drives butts in the seats.
I mean, Chappelle would come into the factory, dude, and I'd be on the show. I was a name, and still I knew the lineage of comedy. Ready? It goes like this: if I come in and new guy over here, I'm next if I want to be. If David Spade comes in, or if fucking Eddie Murphy comes in, I'm not next.
Right.
Those guys are next. It almost is like in the order of which you had some success, that's going to dictate truly where you belong on a show. So when Dave would come in, I was like, this guy's the genius of, I knew Dave. He's younger than me. I knew Dave when I was in New York, and I was, 21 years old, 22, seeing this teenage kid who was always amazing, by the way, Dave. And when he'd come into the factory, I'd be like, sometimes I was waiting a long time. It wasn't a 20-minute bump.
Oh, yeah.
It was like fucking, I wrote a pilot one time while I was waiting to go up after Dave.
That's what the factory thing was about, though, right? Bumping. Like Jamie said, don't come in tonight, buddy.
Yeah, I came in apparently on a night that it was too tight a schedule, and they wanted me to do like a very specific amount of time. And the manager at the time, I told her, I was like, I don't do 10 minutes anymore. I'm not a 10-minute comic anymore. I mean, I made it to, I've done all the sacrifice. I've done all the road work and everything that you need to do to finally go like, if I come into a place, I'm going to do at least 20 minutes. And so, we had a problem. We got into a little bit of a disagreement right in the lobby, and I just left. I left, and it was the next morning that I found out, when Jamie reached out, that we had, severed ties. And I just told him at that moment, I said, hey, listen, I get it. It's business. It's all business. And I'm just glad that I'm working back there, and it's all great now.
Yeah. Do you go to therapy at all? What's up with that? And
I love it.
You love it? How much do you go?
So I started going about 4 years after, like, everything had I hit the highest peak of stardom and the lowest bottom of personal tragedy pretty much within the same couple of years. There's no playbook for that, and there's nobody to help you with that. So I felt very confused, to say the least. I didn't know how to deal with grief. I didn't know how to deal with betrayal. I didn't know how to come back from people, putting a stigma negatively on me, when all I wanted to do, Dean, all I ever have wanted to do is just make people laugh. There was never any other ill intent or, world domination in mind. It was like, I just want to make people laugh in any way that I can for the short amount of time that we're on this crazy fucking rock that's spinning around. And so I went to a therapist, and I had never gone to one. And I remember I sat with this guy maybe for like the first 3 or 4 weeks, and I didn't really feel like it was doing anything, and I wasn't like gleaning anything from it. And then I just came in one day and wearing my heart on my sleeve, and I just really broke down. I really opened up and started having a real conversation with him. Not like the weeks before, it was very surfacey, meet and greet kind of shit.
Yeah.
I went into like who I felt like I was and wanted to be, and, things that had impaired me. I felt impaired. And so brick by brick, I started taking each brick off me to try to get back to a place of lightness. 4 years straight therapy, never missed a session. If I was on tour or whatever, we get on the phone or FaceTime, whatever. And then now it's like I go when I'm feeling like I need it.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff were you finding out? Because I think sometimes, and I believe this, that comedy can be as much addicting as cocaine or booze or gambling, and you can have stuff melt down around you.
Yeah.
By your addiction and your drive.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And what happens is you make that so much the center of your life that you forget to have a life. And that's what I had really discovered. Like, I was like, I don't have a real great woman in my life that I truly feel like I'm giving my best to, and I'm not building towards a family. I concentrated so much on my career because I thought it defined who I was entirely. So I just needed to, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's just like love myself and get back to like enjoying life as much off stage. Cause then when you get on, it's even more of like of an appreciation. And I think that also during that time when I, stepped away from the factory, it was like, that was also a time to be really introspective. I read a lot of books and listened to a lot of people, whether it was podcasts or, just listening, literally just sitting with friends and people that I respected, mentors that were way ahead of me, guys that I grew up watching and loving that took me under their wing and would just call them and say, how do I deal with, A, B, and C? So a lot of soul searching, man.
Was there ever a time where you thought, oh, I wouldn't mind doing like a long run in Vegas?
Yeah. I've been asked. Yeah, I've been asked multiple times. It just didn't feel like the right thing at the right time for me. And a lot of that was because obviously it's a huge monetary kick. Vegas is big money. Casinos, huge fees. But you got to live there. It's a lot of work. You got to be doing shows pretty much every day. I think a lot of these guys
got to live there. That's the worst part.
You got to live there. If you're doing a show every day, if you're doing a residency weekends, maybe you can bop out of there. But it just wasn't for me. And also, Dean, to be really candid, I grew up, okay, ready? I was a welfare kid.
Yeah.
And then I got it all. And then I lost it all. And then I got it all back. So it was a rags to riches story. And now I'm fortunate enough. I have a good team. I invested my money. I've got, great companies. And I don't want to do something unless it truly feels like it's right for the art. I don't want to just do it because it's like, oh, that's a good cash cow and I should go down and I don't operate like that. Yeah. I don't. Even when I did Madison Square Garden, man, all that shit, dude, that wasn't that happened. That wasn't me going, I need to make this happen and I need to make this money. Obviously, I didn't even really care about the money because I didn't know it was being taken from me. That's how much you have to realize. Dean, listen to this. Yeah. I tell you, I didn't care about the money so much. I only cared about the crowds and the shows, to where not only did I not look at my bank account, which now you would say foolishly, but it reminded me when I first started doing stand-up, I did a gig out of Boston. I drive to Orono, Maine, 8 hours. I went all the way up there for $50.
Oh, yeah.
I drove 8 hours. I do the show. I drive all the way home. Guy calls me the next day. He's like, you didn't take your check. I was like, oh, shit, I forgot it. My whole career in comedy, it wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. So, although I think that now in this day and age, it's Vegas can be a really interesting conceit. It's like, I don't know if it's something that I would do in the next few years.
So let's talk a little bit about this tour. You're about to go out on the tour, and
finally.
So I know you've been working on the material for a while, and do you have a new team, a new management and everything?
I've had a new manager for a few years. I'm back with a new agency or an old agency. I'm back with CAA, and I'm back with my old touring manager who I've toured with I'm 29 years in, for 26 or 7 years of my career. So a new team with some old members.
And when you guys sat down, were they sitting down? Because I know a lot of times... people will be like, all right, what do you want to do? So when you sat down, you said, I want to do theaters. What was the plan?
Yeah, I sat down and, okay, so now we're coming off of, it's almost 4 years since Troublemaker. I think it aired 3 seasons ago. So I do Troublemaker. I direct it. It's the first thing that I'd ever done as a comedian that entirely was mine, that I created without a producer or... Comedy Central's going to edit it, or you know what I mean? There's already other people stirring the pot. And my experience doing that was I told them, I go, that was the most gratifying comedy I've ever done. I said, because I didn't feel the weight of the world on me like I may have when I was younger and everything was happening. So I said, I want to cultivate material now that caters to that guy. That's where I'm at in my mentality now. So sat down with him. They said, we're ready to go. I go, I need another 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
I said,
material.
I go, I'm working on material that's long form storytelling with LPMs. And I go, so I'm going to have 2 hours in 2 years. And that's what I did. I put a 2-hour set together. Did it like a underground tour last year, just hit a bunch of locations to see, test the waters out there. And the response was across the board, overwhelmingly please get back on a tour and do this as a regular show or special. So that's kind of where we're at.
And what cities are you doing? How many?
47 cities. Yeah, it's all the major markets, all the kind of cool and interesting spots, and then some places that I've never been before. So
when does it start?
Starts February 20th. My first shows. Up. Yeah. So if people go to danecook.com, I've got the entire tour schedule right there.
How do you, over the years, pick your openers? And like they were your friends for a while.
Yeah.
And then is it tough to have an opener? Because I just had Gary Goldman on, and he was talking about the relationship and the mentorship between a headliner and the opener.
Sure.
Can be really weird out there. It starts to get blurry.
Right.
Maybe the opener is, scraggling around, whatever. How do you do that, and have you really sat down and thought about that on this run?
Yeah, I've reached out to a few people already. What I like to do now is it's that kind of Rolling Stones mentality of like, I don't want to just put somebody on before me that's just okay. I want to put somebody who's going to go out there and get big laughs right off the start. I always respected that, and from years of doing shows where, and this happens almost every single night, you got to bring it, Freddie Soto, who is passed away, he was like a killer in the clubs. Unbelievable. If you followed Freddie, you had to bring your A game, or your B game looked like a fucking C or D game.
Yeah.
So I like to bring guys out, or girls now, that want to get out there and really just hammer it home.
And who's coming out on you?
So I think, we had Brian Monarch.
Yep.
I like Brian a lot. And then I don't want to spoil it yet, because I've reached out to some people to be like special guests and stuff. And I always think that's kind of cool that you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know this guy was here.
Is it tour bus or jets or flying? We're
gonna fly. I'm gonna do all flights, because I still have to. That's the thing, is it's like I have so much stuff happening here that I'm prepping for, that I have to go back and do shows on like near the end of the weekends, and then I'll come back to LA for a few days, get some work done, regroup, and go back out.
What are you working on?
So I've got a film that I'm gonna. Well, I just directed a film that I co-wrote with my producing partners, and it got into the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. So we debuted it there a few days ago. First time we've seen it with a crowd.
What's it called?
It's called American Typecast. It's about based on a true story about my friend Monib Abhat. He is a Middle Eastern actor in LA. Telling me all these stories, man, about like, I'm always playing terrorists and I'm always getting typecast and marginalized basically in these roles. So I said, I think there's a story to tell there. And it's certainly a very different story than my experience. It's not my experience. But we wrote it over a year, put it together, got an amazing cinematographer in there, got unbelievable actors to come in and do it. And lo and behold, we just got into our first major festival. It debuted over 2 nights. And from that, now I'm meeting with this company about, I'm writing a full-length feature that's a drama with some comedy in it that I'm going to do after the tour. And
what's that about?
I can't read. It's like it's a comeback story. I'll say that. It's definitely as a person who's had the odds in and against my favor. I think it's going to be some of my most valuable work that I've done behind the camera. So I look forward to really digging in on that.
Well, now you're a car guy, motorcycle guy.
Yes.
When we talk,
I wish I was more of a motorcycle guy. I just don't, because we always send pictures back and forth, but I never got like
dangerous.
Yeah, I know it is, especially the way people drive out here in LA.
Just texting and smoking weed and everything. And have you had any close calls?
Yes. Yeah, dude. Everybody's smoking weed, by the way. It's
everyone,
like you just go.
As you're riding down splitting lanes, it's like weed. People act like weed is not booze, or doesn't get you high. They're in a giant piece of machinery.
Yeah,
it's stoned.
It's sketchy. My near miss was I was coming up my hill. I live up on a canyon road. And dude, I came up around the corner, and I'm leaning into a blind turn. And there's a guy reversing around the blind turn to find
coming back down?
Yes.
Oh.
And so I don't know what I did. All I know
is Uber, probably.
Right? And I just saw my whole life flash before my eyes. It was terrifying. He was going fast. I kind of hit the car, but luckily my foot went up against it, and the bike didn't come down on me, thankfully. It did come down, but I pushed myself off it just in time, and then, it was pretty fucked up.
Anything happened to the bike?
Just some cosmetic stuff.
Oh, that's
I got
great.
it fixed. Yeah, I still love that bike.
Yeah, you got.
I do love the bike. It's hard to drive around, especially the canyon roads around here, and the streets suck out in LA right now. They're just bumpy and fucking potholes. And
Did you think ever in the last couple of years about moving back to New York?
I think I've done it. I think I did my New York years. I love the city, but at the same time, I like the tempo of out here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just become accustomed to it. I've been here since '98, pretty much permanently. Although I feel like a Bostonian still all the time, it's like I'm more of a Californian now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How long you been here?
I've been here. I bought my home in 2010, so I became like a resident. Before that, it was a duffel bag living and just touring and coming back and forth. So
your pad is amazing.
Yeah.
How long did it take to find that when you're finally looking for a house? Because I always think about if I ever made money. Okay, now I'm kind of fucked because I do love your house, but then I love Craftsman's and I love Old Spanish. So I'm like, God, what would I pick? What was really on your radar when it came down to buying a home?
Yeah. I had some cool apartments, and I think I liked for many years the idea of just kind of like that, confined. It was comfortable. My apartments were like wombs. It was like these. But what happened was at first my one of my managers was like, you're making money, you got to invest. And I wasn't investing. I wasn't really, I'm not a spendthrift. I'm a jeans and sneakers kind of guy. So I wasn't like buying fucking chains and jewels and.
Yeah. You're not even a watch guy, huh?
I'm not, I go through like, I got a Breitling, but but no, I don't really, all the accoutrements, I'm not really as into. So he's like, you should buy a house to invest the money. You could always sell it later and blah, blah, blah. So I went up and I found the place that you're talking about.
How long did that take you to find that, though?
It took me a year.
A year?
Yeah, I looked at 38 or 40 other properties. I hated everything.
Yeah.
I never liked.
You looked at my buddy's place, and he was like, "I think Dane's buying my place up behind the Comedy Store."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My buddy Bob. He was my old landlord.
That was the only other place that I was super close to closing in on. But what I liked about the place that I finally ended up in was it wasn't even so much I like modern architecture, but I'm like you. Like I have different, completely different, styles of, whether it's music or comedy. I like a lot of different eclectic shit. But the energy in that place, whatever that vibe was, as a person who still suffers in many ways from sometimes getting anxious. I don't have bad anxiety like I used to, but I still get anxious. It was one of those places that like when I go home, I can really concentrate and relax there. And I knew that if I could build that up and have a great home life, then I felt like, oh, maybe I can have a great, away from my career, maybe I can feel I'm accomplishing as much as I have in my career as just a regular person. So it was the beginning of a new era for me. I was grown up. I was a big boy at that point.
Yeah. I get energy. Like I lived in Beechwood Canyon 13 years.
Yeah.
And then when I lost that place, for the next 3 years, completely lost.
Yeah.
And people were looking at me like I'm just crazy. Like, oh no, he's going to come over and talk about apartments and stuff. And it was just more of being for real lost.
Yes.
Because it was, I lived in San Francisco for years in one of the greatest apartments I've ever had. And then I moved to LA and had a couple funky spots and then moved into this place at Beechwood. And I was like, oh my God. This is how much I love the place. I never even thought about it. When you don't think about where you live, you're in the ultimate spot. And then when I lost it, I was like, "Oh, what the fuck?"
Right.
And it became a whole different rent world. Here I am, this new comedian, and I'm coming from $1,200 rent control to $2,000.
Yeah.
You can't have roommates at 50. People are like, just get a roommate. It's like, I'm an only child. I'm a weirdo. I can't. That's not going to work.
Right.
I mean, if it worked, I would love that.
Dude,
paying $1,000 for rent? Fuck yeah.
You were comfortable, and the universe was like, boom, it kicked you in the ass.
That's what it
because
did.
Sometimes we need to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
To work harder.
Yeah.
Too comfortable, and we start to, even my house now, I love it. Love being there. Love working out of there. Love getting the fuck out of there, going to work, to come home to it. I don't want to just stay at my house.
Yeah. I appreciate you letting me ask some of the questions because I know there's a lot of like people want to know stuff about guys that are at your level and what they're dealing with.
Sure.
And there is a lot of, there's always chatter that goes on out there.
Right,
and I think a lot of people just listen to whatever and don't really ask.
Right.
I think that if people sat down and talked to each other, we could really move forward on a lot of stuff.
Oh, totally.
Stuff gets brewing.
Yeah.
And it gets crazy out there.
People want to just, believe what they read. And obviously the internet every day is just, churning out a lot of crap. And people want to, buy into it and believe it. So I get that. And we probably, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I probably do it to a certain extent too. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know really what is the drive of someone, but I'm judging them from what I see on a TV show or whatever. So this is always a great opportunity because, especially when I can sit with friends, I don't mind hard questions.
Yeah.
Life's full of them. I don't mind that I've fucked up and had my mistakes.
Yeah.
I've got plenty, but I also like being able to talk to people and maybe, who knows, young artists coming up to be like, if you're being challenged, if you're being ostracized, you're probably doing something right. You know what I mean? Because people, when they see the sparkle, I call it the sparkle. When people see the sparkle, they want it. And if everybody wants your sparkle, then you're fucking diminished.
Yeah.
So I always just tell, I mentor a lot of people now. I'm like the old bull. I mentor, especially comedians, but like people just in all forms of entertainment that I've met. And it's cool to now be able to, people can confide in me because they know that, again, I've seen all sides of it, man. You can hit me with any question, whether it's hey, you were on the Billboard charts, and what was that like being with Jay-Z? Or what was it like when nobody wanted you and everybody said you were done and pack it in? And they both have value to somebody else listening. So thanks for, coming at me with the good stuff.
Well, I just believe in that because there are definitely questions I wanted to know.
Right.
Because I did see a lot of tension out of you. When you're in this town, it can push you back against the wall.
Yeah.
And then you're going to fight. And sometimes people are fighting for territories and stuff that just aren't really there.
Right.
It's like, this is when we're gone, there's other people here.
There's a moment in everybody's life, and I know when my moment was, where you look in the mirror and you have to take stock and you have to really be like, okay, you know what? Forget what other people think about me. What other people think about me is none of my business. That's a great quote. I don't know who said it originally, but what other people think of me is none of my business. And I remember when I made that decision after great therapy and stuff, I was like, people are always going to have an opinion about me the same way they have an opinion about other people now that I'm seeing. I see other people having a lot of success. And what am I hearing? I'm hearing a lot of bullshit. I'm hearing a lot of negative and I'm hearing derogatory stuff. I can now look at that and go, I get it. I understand. When those people call me now and go, a couple of people have reached out to me over the last 5 or 6 years and they had their moment of crossing over and they call me like, I get it. I didn't really understand it when I was looking at you from this side. But it's not easy, man. It's not easy to when you finally have that moment where you're in the crossroads of where your dreams are at. And then you realize, oh wow, now I'm public consumption. I'm everybody's now. Yeah. Everybody's going to be either happy with my choice or upset, and I'm going to hear about it.
I remember you're not the only child because you have a sister.
Yeah, I have my sister Courtney, my little sister.
Yeah.
And then I have other half, my brother was my half brother, and then half sisters.
Oh, is he still in jail?
No.
He got out?
He got out he served about 5 or 6 years.
And they never found the money, right?
They found some of it.
They did? Where at?
Like in his walls. He'd shrink wrapped money and hid it, and upholstered so there was some of it that was hidden, and then most of it he blew it. He invested in not good investments.
So it wasn't like hidden somewhere else. He just invested bad.
It was also hidden somewhere. I mean, it was all over the place. Yeah. It was honestly like the police and investigators were like calling me and saying, hey, we found, that he took money to this state and this place and he owned something, and it was bonkers. I didn't know my brother. I thought I knew this guy that I grew up with. I loved him. And then I hired him, just for people who don't know. And then he was helping me with all my finances. Well, he wasn't helping me because he was taking 12 years. He was stealing from me.
30 million?
I think it was, we don't know. That's the funny thing. I did a forensics audit to look at, and it was like, I think it was closer at the end of the day to like 17 or 18.
Oh, okay.
But it honestly, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be. There's so many things that were missing from the pieces that the detectives need that honestly, dude, it was a lot. It was a lot.
And there's no insurance on that money, right?
No.
Because he worked for you?
No.
Now, when they found the money in the walls, do they say that's your money or does it go up in smoke?
No, they give it back.
Oh, they gave it back?
Well, they put it in evidence for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, okay, so my money's sitting in some vault somewhere in a police station. And then they finally got it to me.
Well, thank God you could still go out at the time tour and just replenish that money.
Well, it was a challenge because I was coming off of the peak.
Yeah.
I was already kind of coming down what would be the other side of that 8-year run of like fame and blah, blah, blah. So not only was it coming down, but then I was like, okay, can I still do these large scale? When you talk about competitiveness, that was the year I was competitive. Because I was like, I have 1 year before I see him in court to try to make back as much as I can. What people maybe don't realize is I had a little bit of money remaining that he couldn't take out of the stocks because it's harder to pull that money out. And I took the little bit that I had left and I rented the arenas. I rented those arenas night after night personally. Like an arena is just a fucking hall
That's all
that you
it
can
is.
rent. Yeah. So I would rent them. And then I ended up renting with my own money 100 arenas. So I was taking the door off of arena shows that I was booking. And it's why today, this tour, every tour, anything I do from now into the future, those fans save my life. Those fans save my ability to keep my home and provide for my family someday when I choose to. So when I go out and I do a show now, Dean, it's like, you're going to get the best show from me possible because I truly appreciate that I can still get out and do it at a high level.
Are you seeing the fans, are they your fans from back in the day and they're older now?
Yep.
Or are you seeing new fans?
Yeah, it feels a little bit like the Aerosmith thing because now 30 years in, basically, now I've got people coming up to me at meet and greets and saying like, I saw you when I was a kid at da-da-da. This is my son or my daughter. And so I've grown up with this generation of comedy fans. And it's funny, the tour last year, sometimes I'd look out and people were like, people's fucking grandmothers were with them. And then they're the kid who saw me in college and now it's years later. So and now it's like I'm getting all these DMs from kids that were too young at the time, and now they're just like, I just got retaliation, and so they're like I did years later with Newhart. They're finding my stuff now,
right?
And I'm meeting a whole new generation of fans, so it's cool.
What are you, 47?
47. Going to be 47 next month.
You think you're going to get married and have kids at all?
I'm in love.
Yeah?
I'm with somebody that I think is amazing. And for the first time in my entire life, it's weird. It's almost like, can't believe it took me so long, but I finally found somebody that I feel like is my equal and really completes my life in a way that I never knew that I could even have. So I'm going to knock on wood because hopefully we can figure out a way to, make the most of it. I want to have kids, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I've wanted a kid since I was like 30. I thought I'd be married at 30. I told my mom, I'll be married with kids at 30. I can't believe that I'm 46 and I still am not. But you know what? Everything's timing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope it happens for you.
Thanks, buddy.
I also hope the tour goes great.
Appreciate that.
And thanks for doing the show.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for finally having me.
Absolutely. And go out to danecook.com.
Sure.
Get some tickets. And he's coming out around the United States.
Yeah.
Starting in a couple weeks.
Couple of weeks and then all through the rest of the year.
What's the tour called?
Tell it like it is.
Tell it like it is.
And that's just what I'm doing.
Are you doing the 2 hours or have you whittled it down to a 90?
It'd be different. I mean,
Right.
if you come see me in different cities, if that's your thing, you're going to go, oh, wow, that was an entirely different opening or closing or something in the middle. So it'll be I never plan out my sets. It's just never been the way that I operate. So you're going to get a little something new every night.
And then shoot it for a special?
Shooting for a special later in the year. Maybe two. I might do two.
Wow.
I might just shoot both of them. And again, what's cool is I can now do that with my own company and make it, and then we'll take it to Netflix or
Shop it
Amazon
around.
So it's the way I feel like if I can ever impart anything to young comedians, it's like you're gonna have to work with other people in terms of how they deliver your content, but try to protect your voice, try to protect your beliefs. And if you can make things yourself, even on your phone, and record it, and it's great, audio and lighting, then it's so much more gratifying when you're being you remember the Brady Bunch episode, Johnny Bravo? He put on the Johnny Bravo jacket. You don't want to be fucking Johnny Bravo. So make sure you're being authentic out there, and I hope people have a great time at the shows when we start in 10 minutes.
Thanks for doing it.
You got it, man.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to Let There Be Talk. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review right there on iTunes, and go out and see Dane all this year on tour. Thank you guys. See ya.